dark shadows and in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast, we are the brave and bold.
Including several who were a part of the 9/11 plot. Yet, Osama bin Laden avoided capture and escaped across the Afghan border into Pakistan. Meanwhile, al-Qaeda continued to operate from along that border and operate through its affiliates across the world. And so shortly after taking office, I directed Leon Panetta, the director of the CIA, to make the killing or capture of bin Laden the top priority of our war against al-Qaeda, even as we continued our broader efforts to disrupt, dismantle, and defeat his network. Then, last August, after years of painstaking work by our intelligence community, I was briefed on a possible lead to bin Laden. It was far from certain, and it took many months to run this thread to ground. I met repeatedly with my national security team as we developed more information about the possibility that we had located bin Laden hiding within a compound deep inside Pakistan. And finally, last week, I determined that we had enough intelligence to take action and authorized an operation to get Osama bin Laden and bring him to justice. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Abracast. I'm Dr. John Towers. So I started saying Dr. John Towers when I dropped my episode last night. So I feel like I didn't explain it at all. I have one of those mail order doctorates of divinity. Basically, I got it just so when I wrote consumer emails, I could sign it Dr. John Towers. It's got me a couple free Big Macs, I can tell you that. So anyhow, I'm not being serious. I don't have a doctorate in like a PhD or anything like this, or whatever. It's just it's a joke, and I used to use it all the time, but I didn't. So there it is. I'm a full disclosure type of dude. So anyhow, tonight we're going to get into another conspiracy story. I wanted to do a Memorial Day story, but for Monday or whatever, but I have a Kabbalah episode dropping on Sunday. I didn't want to step on it or whatever, so I thought we would do like an early sort of Memorial Day thing. So in the cold open, we heard President Obama notifying the world that a group of Americans killed Osama bin Laden. So did it sound weird to you? A group of Americans? We all know now that this group of Americans were actually Navy SEALs. And with that knowledge, Obama's sort of sidestepping of this detail seems weird. But it was a very important sidestep, actually to his credit. As a matter of operational security, as not to out the unit or the units that killed bin Laden, because, well, they were still deployed and operational in theater. Not wanting to put a target on your forces' back for thousands of bloodthirsty, savage jihadists seems like a good idea. A really, really good idea. And one, we are going to see tonight what happens when that target does get put on these men's backs. And we are going to talk a little bit about the man who put that target there. So you're like, usually he bullshits a little bit more or whatever. I'm not bullshitting. We have a huge episode to get through, and now is just the fucking time to do it. Now is the time to do it. If you're playing along at home, please, man your vessel of the art and fill it with your weapon of mass distraction. Mine is Gin Jihad, filled to the brim. I'm ready to go this evening. I got some fuel. I don't feel like I have a frog in my throat tonight, so I'm looking forward to getting this thing done. Because this is a fascinating case. We talk a lot about conspiracies and stuff, and I don't need a secret space program conspiracy, because shit's weird enough on the fucking ground on Earth. I don't need a flat Earth conspiracy, because the fucking round Earth is crazy, and the state of geopolitics is crazy enough, as we're going to look at tonight, where one doofus can say one thing and just unleash hell. So here's to you guys. Thanks for listening. All right. So Obama makes his historic announcement on a late night broadcast of May 2nd, 2011. A small group of much diligent work by the CIA, and then a small group of Americans went and killed this motherfucker. At a Pentagon briefing that same day, I believe it was the same day, a Pentagon briefing, a senior defense official was asked if the Navy SEALs, if it was the Navy SEALs that killed bin Laden. He responded, quote, "Not going to comment on the units or the numbers," unquote. Wisely so. This was actually determined hours and hours before the announcement was made, is how they were going to describe who actually killed this motherfucker. And it was decided that they would withhold the unit that was responsible, which is wise. Okay, so one day later, Vice President Joe Plugs Biden did way better than anyone should have possibly expected him to do. He waits until May 3rd to blow this giant secret, and it's on tape.
We would have hung out together our whole lives.
Oh yeah, okay, folks.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be invited to speak to such, and I mean this sincerely, an illustrious audience. And I understand everyone from Colin Powell to, there's just so many distinguished folks out there that I can't see, but I'm told are here. And I'm flattered to be asked to come and help celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Atlantic Council. Let me briefly acknowledge tonight's distinguished honorees. Admiral Jim Stavridis is the real deal. He could tell you more about and understands the incredible, the phenomenal, the just almost unbelievable capacity of his Navy SEALs and what they did last Sunday. Placido Domingo is probably the only.
So the argument that could be made was that it could have been U.S. Army Rangers. It could have been the Army Delta Force. It could have been Special Forces. It could have been CIA operators. It could have been fucking ninjas. It could have been drone pilots. It could have been the guys that operate cruise missile batteries. It could have been anything, any group of Americans. But identifying them puts a laser focus on them for anyone who is seeking revenge. As a side note here, I want to point out, For you guys that do play along at home and you fact check me when I say or accuse these people of doing fucking weird and sinister things, I don't talk so much about my iTunes reviews anymore, but when I used to pay a lot of attention to them, there was a few on there where people would validate me. They were like, the stuff that this guy says, it all checks out. And I love that. I love people checking me out. So fucking check me out, right? But what I'm saying is, you have to look deep to verify some of these things. Don't be like, I'm going to fact check this motherfucker because I don't believe what he's saying at all. I'm going to go to Snopes. Point in fact, if you look at Snopes and you look at this story, Snopes straight up lies to you. The question that Snopes, is snoping, I guess. Did Joe Biden publicly reveal the identity of the special ops unit that killed bin Laden? The question are statements the former U.S. vice president made following the raid that killed the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. Snopes straight up says false. And ladies and gentlemen, I implore you, you just fucking heard them do it. What? It's just a flat out lie. And I quote, Admiral James Stafford can tell you more about the incredible and phenomenal, just the almost unbelievable capacity of his Navy SEALs and what they did last Sunday. So if you're doubting me, if you're like, no, Snopes really knows what's going on, just pull up another web browser and type in May 2011 calendar and then just look what last Sunday was. I would be remiss if I didn't say an extra word about these incredible events, the extraordinary events of the past Sunday. As Vice President of the United States of America, I was in absolute awe of the capacity and the dedication of the entire team, both the intelligence community, the CIA, and the Navy SEALs. 3 months later, on August 6, 2011, in the Tanang River Valley of Afghanistan, a Chinook helicopter called Extortion 17 was rocketed out of the sky under very mysterious circumstances, killing 30 Americans, including 15 members of SEAL Team 6. What follows is a pretty cut and dry retelling of the official story. This is from the Final Flight of Extortion 17. It was the deadliest helicopter crash in the history of the U.S. Special Operations. Why did it happen? This is from Air and Space magazine by Ed Darack, written in 2015. I'm getting wound up. I got to calm down a little bit. A few minutes past 2 a.m. on August 6, 2011, at a dusty forward operating base 40 miles south of Kabul, Afghanistan, the rotors of two U.S. Army CH-47D Chinooks began to turn. Operating with no light save for the faint green glow of night vision goggles and cockpit instrument panels, two helicopters, call sign Extortion 17 or Extortion 17 or an Extortion 16, lifted into the darkness and accelerated towards a destination less than 20 miles west. Extortion 17 and its 38 occupants would not return. A Taliban fighter shot the helicopter out of the sky with a rocket-propelled grenade, and all on board were killed. The single greatest loss of life in the Afghan war. The single greatest loss of American life in the Afghan war, I should have mentioned. Those killed ranked among the world's most highly trained and experienced commandos, including 15 men from Gold Squadron of the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, popularly called SEAL Team 6. Just 3 months earlier, members of a counterpart SEAL Team 6 squadron successfully raided a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, and killed Osama Bin Laden. In light of that raid's success, the shoot down of Extortion 17 incited a flurry of conspiracy theories. Right. That's what we're going to be talking about. Skipping ahead, the mission had begun about 4 hours prior to the shoot down when the two helicopters touched down side by side in Zarin, a village in the bare rock-walled Tangi Valley of Warduk Providence, as two U.S. Army AH-64 Apache attack copters and an Air Force AC-130 gunship and a smaller fleet of unmanned surveillance craft orbited overhead a platoon of the 75th Ranger Regiment and members of an Afghan Special Operations Unit stormed down the rear ramps of the Chinooks and into the night. And their target was an Afghan named Grae Tahir and his group of fighters. Intelligence had revealed Tahir to be a senior Taliban chief of the Tangi Valley region with probable ties to upper echelon Taliban leadership in Pakistan. That's the way Obama says it. Pakistan. It's Pakistan. As the ground assault forces rushed towards Tahir's compound, Extortion 17 and 16 sped back to the base where they were refueled and waited word for the extraction of the team. Evacuated, wounded, or race reinforcing troops to Zarin. Come on, pages. A few minutes past 2 a.m., August 6, 2011, a dusty forward operating base. Sorry, hold on. When the two Chinooks had first touched down in the village, a group of 8 fighters armed with AK-47s and RPG rockets propelled grenades launched bolted from the compound. One AH-64 crew, after identifying the men as enemy combatants. All right, what I'm skipping is this group of Rangers went out, and these Extortion 16 and 17 went back to the base, and there's conflicting reports of whether these Rangers got in trouble or not. And this large group of SEALs and supporting troops were called in as a quick reaction force. So what that means is the Rangers went in to hunt this guy down, and apparently they did or they did not get in trouble. I don't know. We're going to see later that there's conflicting statements on that. And so this quick reaction force, which is made up of 15 SEALs and a bunch of other dudes, loaded up in Extortion 17, leaving Extortion 16 basically empty, which besides its flight crew. And so they're rushing out, being a quick reaction force. So when the two Chinooks first touched down in the village, a group of 8 fighters armed with AK-47s and RPG rocket-propelled grenades bolted from the compound. One AH-64 crew, identifying the men as enemy combatants, fired on them with their gunship's 30mm cannons, killing 6 of them, and remaining 2 fighters ducked into a stand of trees and disappeared from the Apache's infrared scanners. 3 hours after disembarking from the Chinooks, the assault force had secured the compound through detained number of Tahir's men. Oh, this is still a story of the Rangers, I guess. Believing that Tahir was likely among one of those groups, deployed immediate reaction force to interdict while the Rangers held the compound. Planners then chose a new landing force for the IRF, but it was large enough to accommodate only one Chinook. Well, I guess that's why they filled it with one. Filled one of them up. Faced with the possibility of confronting 9 or 10 Taliban fighters, planners increased the reinforcement team from 17 to 32 men, formed around 15-man SEAL group. The IRF also included 2 SEALs from another team. That I believe the 2 dudes were from SEAL Team 2. 5 Navy Special Operations Support personnel, 3 Air Force Special Tactics Airmen, 7 Afghan National Army Commandos, a translator, and a combat assault dog. The IRF commander then made a critical decision in order to get everyone on the ground as quickly as possible to deny the Taliban time to react. He ordered an entire force to fly in Extortion 17 or 17. Extortion 16 flew empty. Commanders frequently request, I don't understand if they have security helicopters and their landing zone is only big enough for one of these Chinooks. Why not stagger the deployment? You put half of them in one Chinook and you put half of them in the other Chinook. You don't put your eggs all in one basket. This isn't like, I'm not a military genius. The second Chinook is flying anyways, and you have your security. I don't know. They say it's in order to get everyone on the ground as quickly as possible to deny the Taliban time to react. But it seems stupid. Commanders frequently request the Chinooks to insert troops. Helicopters are capacious and fast, and they can perform well in Afghanistan's performance-degrading high altitude and heat. The U.S. Special Operations Command possesses its own specialized Chinooks flown by ultra-secretive 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. Skipping ahead a little bit for time. Extortion 17 and 16 weren't MH-447s, and their crews were not Night Stalkers. The mission was flown by conventional pilots using unmodified Chinooks. It's a math problem. There are more operations that can be supported by the 160th at any given time, says Major Matthew Bradley. Blah, blah, blah. The pilots and the crew on Extortion 17, however, had ideal experience and abilities for the mission that night. At the flight controls were David R. Carter of Colorado Army National Guard and co-pilot Brian J. Nichols, a Kansas-based Army reservist. Nichols had deployed 3 times to combat zones, and Carter was more than 4,000 hours of flight time, was one of the most experienced helicopter pilots in the U.S. military. And he was also an instructor of high altitude Army National Guard aviation training sites. During previous deployments to Iraq, Carter flew dozens of similar raids, which we often planned and led, and gained a reputation of working well with special operations troops. Our area of operation was the greatest, was the entire country of Iraq, and every mission was a night mission, says David Pat Gates, a pilot in Carter's unit in the 2nd Battalion, 135th 135th Aviation Regiment, a Colorado National Guard unit based in Aurora. We were on the goggles the whole time, supporting special operations. I just got to cut through some of this stuff for time to get to it. The battalion had been flying in Afghanistan for about 2 weeks. Flying into the Tangi Valley for the second time, Extortion 17 and 16 took a different route, approaching from the northwest instead of the south. 6 minutes from their estimated landing time, Extortion 16 broke away from the lead Chinook and orbited at a location close enough to help if needed. Extortion 17 sped alone towards the landing zone. For helicopter crews in Afghanistan, the most dangerous times are landing and taking off. Approaching to land or having just taken off, the craft is flying slow and low. That is the tempo. So it presents a tempting target. But even precisely aimed shot fired from an unguided weapon by a seasoned fighter is a subject for ballistic altering whims of atmospheric variations, subtle and undetected flaws in launcher or projectile, or uncontrollable environmental factors such as wind gusts, large temperature variations, or even particulates in the air. There are a lot of bullets out there to say to whom it may concern, says Major Douglas Glover, Marine Weapons and Senior Operator, who is a Senior Watch Officer in the Marine Air Operations Center in southern Afghanistan. The RPG is not a laser. It does not fly in a straight line, and there is no way to know what exact path it will take, just as a fairly good trajectory. Sometimes the enemy succeeds in delivering one of these to whom it may concern projectiles. Skipping ahead, now deep in the Tangi Valley, their night vision goggles showed the world around them in greenish hues, the IRF team members ready to hit the ground running as the pilot slowed. Extortion 17 descended towards the village at 2:36 a.m. Extortion 17 requested an infrared spotlight visible only through night vision goggles to illuminate the landing zone. The crew of Slasher 02, the AC-130 circling above, flicked the switch on their powerful light. "Burn is on," they radioed. Through the goggles, the landing zone shone brilliantly. Carter and Nichols continued the descent. LZ as ICE transmitted one of the Rangers on the ground, indicating the landing zone was free of enemy activity. Seconds later, with the Chinook just over 100 feet off the ground and traveling at 58 miles per hour, 2 or 3 previously unseen fighters emerged from the tower. We're going to see later they call them squirters, which I think is hilarious. The 2-story building, roughly 220 yards south of the helicopter, shouldering RPG launchers. They may have seen Extortion 17 in the landing zone through their own night vision goggles, or simply aimed by sound alone. 2 fired at roughly the same time. The first round sailed past the helicopter, and the second slammed into one of the Chinook's rear rotor blades and exploded, severing 10 feet of it. The torque of the spinning rotor assembly, now catastrophically imbalanced, ripped the rear pylon off the Chinook fuselage. Toward the forward rotor system then tore off, stressed by the imbalance of the strain of carrying what would normally have been a shared load. Less than 5 seconds after the RPG round hit, the helicopter spun uncontrollably, plummeting into the dry creek bed and erupting in a ball of fire that killed all on board. The United States military continually works to improve the protection of transport helicopters, their occupants, according to the Glover Bradley. One of the most significant tactical evolutions of the Afghanistan conflict was ever heavier use of unmanned aerial systems and other airborne intelligence gathering systems capable of loitering overhead for hours undetected. Small fleets of unmanned craft pass imagery to the mission planners before and during the raid at Joy Zarin, allowing them to recognize individual fighters, learn their habits, pinpoint where they slept, and identify the types of weapons they carry. So what the fuck happened? So something that this article does not get into, which we're going to talk a lot about, is the rules of engagement. Because there's some stories about the rules of engagement changing while this was going on. So that was pretty much the straightforward portion of the episode. And when we come back, we're going to get into the, I don't want to say speculative portion of it. We're going to get into the conspiracy portion of what actually fucking went down here. Hang tight. Hey, reminder that I'm over at subscribestar.com/Abercast now. It's like a free speech, open source free speech alternative to Patreon. I got a bunch of stuff over there. If you guys are interested in supporting the show, and I hope that you are, I've been putting a lot of extra hours in for you guys lately. You could go subscribe over there. Right now, I only got one tier, so basically everything available you get on that one tier. Also, don't forget to check out Abercast.com. There's social media links there at the bottom. I love hearing from you guys. I love interacting with you guys, listen to your weird theories and all this. You can sign into the mailing list. You get a bunch of stuff on the mailing list. The coolest thing you get, in my opinion, is you get a sneak peek of my tarot card deck that I'm working on. So go check that out. Feature topic link. If you like these topics, you can just search by the topic and not have to scroll through the whole archive looking for what you want. I think that it's a little outdated. I haven't updated it in like 2 weeks, I think, but it's very convenient. If you don't want to, like, if you're like, I like the conspiracy stuff, but I don't like the, ritual magic stuff. Like, it's a tool. It's there for you. While you're there, check out some comic books and graphic novels. Also, there's a shop link for the Vessels of the Art. I got a few of them. I'm trying to unload. Just a quick note about those is it's only in the States. I'm not shipping overseas with these things. Check out the Facebook page, check out the YouTube page, and also remember, check out the Sermon of the Wolf. It's a 6-part deep dive into lycanthropy and werewolfism. So let's get back to this wild fucking story. Okay, so we're moving to a new article. The story behind the shoot down of Extortion 17, Part 1 by Grae, Stafford. This was published March 2014. Let's see, where do I want to jump in on this? One of those aboard was a U.S. Navy SEAL named Aaron Vaughn. Now his parents, Karen and Billy Vaughn, are speaking out about what happened and the catalog of errors that led to the downing of Extortion 17. By the way, Extortion 17 is a pretty heavy metal name for a helicopter. So I'm pretty happy about, at least it wasn't named like Bravo 02 or something. Karen explains that after the vice president made his statement, their son called home very concerned about their safety. Within 24 hours, Aaron called home and said, "Mom, you need to wipe your social media clean. I mean, you need to get everything off of it. My son was never nervous. He was a fearless warrior." And he was worried that day, not for himself. He was nervous for his loved ones who couldn't defend themselves. According to Karen, based on written testimony that the Vaughns now have in their possession, after it says after the Biden made his statement, increased chatter from the Taliban showed they were devoting their efforts to downing a NATO chopper. The Vaughns argued that the administration officials, including the CIA director Leon Panetta, who was so keen to garner good publicity from the SEALs operations that operational security was jeopardized in favor of sympathetic coverage. They include revealing classified details, including the names of the SEALs that were involved, to Hollywood director Catherine Bigelow, to assist in the making of the movie Zero Dark 30. The Special Forces community went crazy in fear for their families, Karen said. The Vaughns believe that the laissez-faire approach to operational security in Afghanistan, including the sharing of tactical information with unsecure Afghan forces, led to the Taliban being able to accurately target the forces of SEAL Team 6. They knew who was on the chopper that night, Aaron's father said. By 2009, our ambassador had made statements that the American government believed that at least 25% of the Afghan National Army was infiltrated by the Taliban. So we're going to move on. This is the second part of that same article. So this is the story behind the shoot down of Extortion 17, Part 2. Let's see. The family asked the government for more information about the circumstances surrounding the attack, but Karen Vaughn said that the response has not been friendly. We received quite a bit of pushback, mostly in the form of intimidation. She said some of those ways we really can't talk about on film because there were very personal ways that signal that we are going to isolate you, we are going to separate you, and we are going to make you pay. The Vaughns discussed 7 troubling red flags that they have found in looking for answers about their son's death in the war America was waging on radical Islamic jihad. They include the restrictive and life-threatening counterinsurgency rules of engagement policy changes in 2009 that tied the hands of warriors in militarized forms of political correctness. Karen Vaughn tells of the specific increase in the numbers of killed and wounded in action after the 2009 changes in the rules of engagement. You know, a red flag that no one talks about is that year was open season on helicopters in Afghanistan. They knocked a bunch of them down. These motherfuckers were blasting helicopters everywhere. They also recalled an uncomfortable Dover, Delaware ceremony that rocked Gold Star families who watched 8 separate caskets draped in the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan's flag be taken from transport planes. Realizing that there was a good possibility that American fighters were misplaced in on the wrongly flagged caskets, Billy Vaughn, fighting back emotions, exclaimed, "How could they be so callous? And how can they be so callous? Young boys grow up, becomes an American warrior and fights for that American flag. And what is he fighting for? That is what he wears. That is what he follows. And when his body lies helpless, the government, the military does not treasure what he has done enough to make sure that he comes home in the flag that he fought for." He continued, "We just don't want to know somebody needs to be fired for making a decision like that. You cannot treat American warriors like that. We raised him," they're talking about their son Aaron, "in the 80s when America was strong." Karen Vaughn said he learned to love his America the most. Of us would give anything to have back right now. My greatest fear is that he and so many others have died in vain. If we don't regain this American dream, this concept our founders were brilliant enough to fight and die for, I feel like it will all be for naught. I feel like it will all be for naught if we don't do something drastic right now to get a grip back on the concept of America. Okay, next article. Sorry, I had to take a little break. Families suspect SEAL Team 6 crash was an inside job on the worst day in Afghanistan. This is from Rowan, Scarborough. This is not from InfoWars or whatever. This is from the fucking Washington Times. October 2013. Questions haunt the families of Extortion 17, the 2011 helicopter mission in Afghanistan that suffered the most U.S. military deaths in a single day in the war on terrorism. The investigative file made available to the Washington Times shows that the helicopter's landing zone was not properly vetted for threats or protected by gunships, while commanders criticized the mission as too rushed and the conventional Chinook chopper as ill-suited for a dangerous troop infiltration. So what this guy's talking about, the landing zone was not properly vetted for threats, it's American military doctrine they call it soften the landing zone. So if they're sending troops in to a landing zone, it's common practice to hammer the fuck out of it with artillery before you do a landing, right? So, you're in this hostile territory. It's the middle of the fucking night. Your enemy has night vision goggles. You have night vision goggles. You're going to light this fucking landing zone up. They call it the burn. You're going to burn it. it is common practice to hammer it with artillery before your helicopters touch down. It was a lack of doing this here. They did not do this, which is why these fucking dudes were still alive with their RPGs in hand when this chopper. I don't like to call it a chopper, because to me choppers are like I associate choppers with like the helicopters from MASH. You know, I don't know. Anyhow, they didn't do this when these Chinooks, I used to live right next to an airfield. Actually, I live right next to an airfield twice, an Army airfield twice. And these choppers, or these fucking Chinooks, are loud as fuck when they take off and land. They're generally, I have very rarely seen them used as troop carriers. In my experience, they are more used for cargo. You can sling enormous weight of cargo underneath them in a net. Used to see him just buzz around all the time with huge bags of shit slung to them. Let me get back to this. Every day, Charlie Strange, the father of one of the 30 Americans who died August 6, 2011, in the flash of a rocket-propelled grenade, asks himself whether his son Michael was set up by someone inside the Afghan government wanting revenge on Osama Bin Laden's killers. SEAL Team 6. Somebody was leaking to the Taliban, says Mr. Strange, whose son intercepted communications as a Navy cryptologist. They knew someone tipped them off, and there were guys in the tower and guys in the bush line. They were sitting there waiting, and they sent our guys right into the middle. Don Hamburger's son, Patrick, an Army staff sergeant who also perished in the Chinook, when the Chinook descended to a spot less than 150 yards where armed Taliban fighters watched from a turret. He asked why the command sent his son into the Tanang Valley towards a hot landing zone in a cargo airship instead of a special operations helicopter. The souped-up choppers, the MH-47s, and the MH-60 Blackhawks. Dude, riding in a Blackhawk is super fun. The way they call it an open loach. It basically is like a van with big side doors that open up. And the way the propeller or the rotor spins, if you're sitting in the, you sit face to face when you're on the loach. So if your back is towards the back of the flight crew, you're good. But if you're facing the guys whose backs are facing the backs of the flight crew and you're on the leftmost spot by the open van door, I can't remember what they call it, but you're like in the vacuum zone, like the way the propeller spins around. It creates like a tornado, like right around where you are. And one time I was in a Blackhawk, I would always make sure that however my combat seating worked, I would never be there. I would find a reason to not be there. But I was sitting across from a guy once who was stuck in the vacuum zone or whatever they call it. And he just put this giant thing of dip in. And he was sitting there. And he kept trying to spit his dip out the van door. And it would just zip right back in his face. Like in a split second. He would turn and try to spit. And it would just bam! Fucking slap him. He wound up swallowing dip for like 30 minutes on the flight in. Hilarious. Where the fuck was I? Yeah. Somebody was Don Hamburger. That's right. I'm fucking hungry all of a sudden. So it's talking about how the SEAL Team 6 rode a modified stealth version of the Black Hawk to go kill bin Laden. They were flown by the Night Stalker pilots, skilled in fast ground-hugging maneuvers to avoid detection. It says when you fly into the valley, you've got the hillsides on both sides of it with the houses built into the hills of the valley. It is an extremely dangerous mission. Mr. Hamburger said the M8, the new model, they've got radar that will pick up incoming missiles or incoming RPGs. They're faster, they're quicker on attack, and they're more agile. So there was every reason in the world to use the MH that night. Well, I'm going to err on the side of caution with this. I mean, I'd like to think that we just have a fleet of these things laying around. We can use them. But you have to understand that Black Hawk, this stealth plane or this stealth helicopter they're talking about, does not hold 35 fucking dudes. It just doesn't. So if that's your issue, like if you need to get 35 dudes there fast, like I said, the original Ranger deployment that went out, some people say that they were in trouble, which is why this quick reactionary force was dispatched in the first place. So if you're like, I need to get boots on the ground now to help these Rangers, send these 15 SEALs with their support teams or whatever with them and get them on the ground as fast as possible. There might just not have been a reason, and you're like, well, how come the Rangers didn't take these stealth Black Hawks? Well, because the Rangers move in a lot larger capacity than a team of SEALs. Rangers, I believe, deploy by company or by platoon. Neither 15 Navy SEALs is it's like two squads. In my understanding of it, I've never worked with SEALs. I've rarely worked with Rangers. So, I mean, there's a bell curve here. But when you look at the logistics of it, that explains why they needed the Chinooks. My point of view about the Chinooks is it isn't a mystery why they had them. They were moving massive amounts of people. Not massive, but they were moving large groups of people. My issue with the Chinooks is why send Extortion 1.6 empty and Extortion 1.7 full? You're putting all your eggs in one basket, as I mentioned before, especially if it's a hot LZ. I don't know. I feel like I'm just going over the same ground over again. Back to the thing. Sith Duangrada, whose 26-year-old son John was a Navy expeditionary specialist. Oh, this is the guy who handled the dog. He had the combat dog with him. He handed the warrior dog Bart. And he said, had lots of unanswered questions. I want to know why so many U.S. servicemen, especially SEALs, were assembled on one aircraft. That's what I'm fucking saying. He said, I want to know why the black box for the helicopter has not been found. I want to know many things. So this black box business is, after this crash happened, they sent a bunch of dudes to search for this box. And it was never recovered. And out of the 20 or 30 helicopters that had gone down in Afghanistan, this is the only instance that they never found the black box. So I'm just going to leave that there. You can speculate about it all you want. Not all the families believe the fact-finding investigation conducted by Army Brigadier General Jeffrey Colt covered all issues. Colt, who has since been promoted to Major General, told commanders that his job was not to find the fault. In his report, did not criticize any person or decision. I want people held accountable, said Mr. Strange, a former union construction worker who deals blackjack in a Philadelphia casino. A spokesman for the U.S. Central Command, which oversees war and conducted the probe, declined to answer the family's questions and referred a reporter to General Colt's report. Some family members believe the Americans were betrayed by the Afghan government and that someone tipped off the Taliban. One reason they cite is that the Taliban had begun planting loyalists inside the international security forces to kill Americans, a practice known as green on blue. was going to try to explain that, but I'm not going to. Green on blue assassinations. They say SEAL Team 6 had targets on its back since it became known through various Obama administration leaks to the press that the unit killed bin Laden 3 months earlier. Commanders told General Colt's investigation team that the Taliban put 100 fighters into the Tangi Valley for the express purpose of bringing down U.S. aircraft. A flight with 17 SEALs would be a coveted target. So they're saying 17 where we've seen 15 earlier. So whatever. Then there was the fact that a group of Taliban fighters equipped with handheld radios shifted positions and gathered near Extortion 17's landing zone, a spot never before used by the Americans. 2 Taliban fighters armed with rocket-propelled grenades just happened to be stationed at a high turret less than 150 yards from the Chinook's hot landing zone. One paragraph in the Colt report grabbed the family's attention. In it, crash investigators were interviewing the top leadership of the Joint Special Operations Task Force that put together the mission. One of them was asked about the manifest, and they said, "Yes, sir," Commander answered. And I'm sure you know by now the manifest was accurate with the exception of the redacted personnel that were on it. So the redacted personnel, they were incorrect. All 7 names were incorrect. And I cannot talk to the backstory of why. The quote, 7 unquote family members say refer to the Afghan soldiers. Well, I mean, that makes sense and jives with what's in the other story. The open Colt report makes no reference about why the manifest was inaccurate. Military censors redacted any reference to the Afghans. They're talking about the Afghans that were on board. Some families believe the task force, at least at the moment, was forced to remove 7 Afghans whose names remained on the manifest and replace them with 7 other senior Afghans who had been aware of the mission, because each operation must be approved by a joint operational coordination group made up of Americans and Afghan national security forces. A Central Command spokesperson declined to discuss the issue. My thought is that they were being set up by Afghan military. Mr. Hamburger said, I have a feeling that is why Afghans were switched at the last minute. That is why they were not on the manifest. And I think that our military discovered that and did not want to disclose the truth to the families. I don't know that for sure. But you just add everything up, and it wasn't right with the mission that night. It really worries you. General Colt wrote that he believes the Taliban stood ready to fire for one simple reason: the 3-hour Ranger operation. The aircraft continually buzzing overhead alerted every enemy in the area that more helicopters might be on the way. Then why not soften the landing field? Frustrating. The Apache helicopters' early arrival at both LZs, coupled with the early kinetic engagements of the enemy elements, likely provided early warning to the Taliban fighters that additional helicopters may be inboard to the area. Skipping ahead a little bit. I'm fighting the times, bro. Not the times. I'm fighting the time. Hamburger cites as another motive to obtain more information were the rules of engagement for the U.S. troops. He wants them changed. Gunship crews cannot fire on fleeing Afghans before confirming they are carrying weapons, even though they are obviously our Taliban fighters. Such rules inhibited the Apaches and the C-130 gunships that night. The Special Operations Commander in Kabul wanted to authorize a strike team on the squirters. Remember I said that they call them squirters? I fucking love it. I've heard them called worse on the battle. Not me being on the battlefield, but I've read accounts where they're called worse than squirters. But this was unable to determine whether the group was armed. The Colt report says the commander then ordered the ill-fated SEAL mission to help the Rangers round up everyone. More aggressive rules of engagement might have removed any need for the mission. I guess maybe that's the official reason why they didn't soften the landing zone, is because they were afraid there was some fucking goat herders or something there. Moments after the shoot down, an Apache pilot pinpointed the source of the rocket-propelled grenade, but could not fire due to the rules of engagement and tactical directives. I couldn't fire at the buildings where I thought the shooter was, so I aimed directly to the west of the building, the pilot told General Colt. Hamburger also said the mission did not follow protocol, included no stacked escorts of Apaches, and 130 gunships would be more eyes on the landing zone to look for shooters. The command relied on the gunships that had been sent with the Ranger team, but had two tasks and paid more attention to the first, watching the squirters. And appears to be a discrepancy between General Colt's public 27-page report and what the Apache pilots told him during the probe. The A-64 Apaches serve as the Chinook's bodyguards during typical troop insertions, escorting them to the landing zone and then targeting enemies on the ground. But Extortion 1-7 had no Apache escorts. So that's it. I'm Dr. John Towers, and this is the Abercast. Hey, subscribestar.com/Abercast. I don't know. If you feel like you want to support the show, that would be a great way to do it. It's $3. You get a bunch of cool stuff, and, $3, you're not going to miss it. There's like 14 exclusive episodes on there right now. There's going to be more. We're going to start doing 1 or 2 more a month. Apparently, I'm a workaholic. Like, you're getting 3 episodes this week. So, there's not going to be any shortage of exclusive episodes over there. Check out all the stuff. There's videos up there. There's graphic stuff. There's notes. There's full text episodes of some shows. Like, there's plenty of things there for you. Abercast.com, social media links, mailing lists. You get to see a bunch of fun stuff for joining onto the mailing list. Right now, the coolest thing you can see, in my humble opinion, is the my tarot card. I'm designing a set of tarot cards, and I got some sneak peeks up there. I got 20 cards you can check out up there right now. Also, on Sunday, we're dropping a Kabbalah episode, so you can sign into the mailing lists and get access to, like, literally, I just lay my notebook down on the scanner and scan in, like, the Kabbalistic tree of life and the 3 Sephiroths, the 3 Sephirothic triangles that we were talking about and all that stuff, the good stuff. While you're there, check out some comic books and graphic novels, and also, remember, there's a shop link now. You can pick up a Vessel of the Art. I got a card of them here I'm trying to get rid of. Check out the Facebook page, the YouTube channel, and remember to check out the Sermon of the Wolf. It's a 6-part deep dive. I think we're moving into the 4th episode on Sunday. It's a deep dive into lycanthropy and werewolfism. It's been a lot of fun. I've really had a good time with it. So that's it. I'm John. This is the Abercast, and Dr. Towers, over and out.